Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The WBA regular champion Manuel Charr says he's in shock after allegedly failing a doping test. The heavyweight, who resides and fights out of Germany, had been due to face Quindo in the first defence of his regular title, which he won in November 2017 at the end of this month. That fight has now been cancelled. More on that later. So it's alleged a sample that was taken at the end of August as part of the WBA's random drug testing protocol, which is administered by the Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency, or VADA, tested positive for two substances. Some media are reporting anabolic steroids. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll get into ChaRR's statement, which he's posted to his social media. I'll read it in its entirety, and then I'll get to a few thoughts, because this whole situation, it's a mess. It really is. Not only is Charr affected now, it's also leaving Quindo and his long-awaited title shot in limbo. And it does potentially open the door for Trevor Bryant, the WBA interim champion, if Charr is not ultimately cleared. And Jarrell Miller, he could also well be a loser in this situation as well. More on that later. But first, Manuel Charr says, "Tonight came the news I tested positive. My manager, Christian Jaeger, and my promoter, Bernd Trendelkamp, then cancelled the fight without informing me or contacting me. This procedure disappoints me a lot. I cannot explain the result, but will do everything I can to explain it. I am now looking forward to the results of the B sample, and today again have undergone an independent and voluntary doping test. The results are expected to be released on Saturday, 22/9/18, so the Saturday, 22nd September. I have always been clean and in all fights clean, and therefore I cannot say at the moment definitely how this result comes about. I am in shock myself, dear fans, especially since I am in the final of the fight preparation. The defense of the World Championship title has been determining my life for months. I prepare for this fight with great discipline and great physical commitment. During my preparations for combat, I take various dietary supplements to me. It will need to be examined if the dietary supplements may have influenced the doping test. I am working hard to explain the result of the doping test and the background and do everything in my power to defend my World Championship title. I will not give up, and I will keep you up to date. Your Manuel Charr. Hashtag Team Diamond Boy. Hashtag Vonderstrasse Zuden Sternen. That was Manuel Charr's statement. I'm not exactly what that last hashtag was, or if I even pronounced it correctly, but I hope I did. Hashtag Vonderstrasse Zuden Sternen. Clearly Charr, he's at a loss to explain the test result, which throws his career well and truly into limbo until this result of this B sample is known. The voluntary doping test that he's undertaken, sure, it's proactive and a positive mood. It sort of sets him in a good light. But, given it's been administered 3 weeks removed from the failed test, how meaningful is it going to be? It's debatable. But clearly the situation, it hurts Charr, it hurts his reputation, and obviously his first title defence. It's been a long time coming. It's cancelled. And his comment about taking various dietary supplements, it's an interesting one for me, because while he's saying that they now need to be examined to see if they influence the doping test result, the reality is he's a top athlete and he should have done his due diligence on anything he's been taking. That's his responsibility to himself, so that he doesn't wind up in these situations and potentially, he's at threat of being stripped of his title and facing a ban. And the days of falling back on excuses related to, I took a supplement, I didn't know what was in it, they're long gone. You have to be more careful than that. I'm not saying that Charr hasn't, but the fact that he's raised that as a possibility, it doesn't bode well. Some are going to say that Charr, he was probably cycling off some gear, he misjudged the process, and he's been caught as a result. And that is a possibility. And the test results do suggest, anabolic steroids, 2 of them, have been used. But I will withhold piling in on him until we do get the B sample result. But this whole situation, it well and truly has a domino effect, regardless of the outcome. The first domino, it's already fallen. The title fight with 45-year-old Quindo, it's been shelved. and that was due to be held in Cologne on September the 29th. And interestingly, the fight card that was listed on BoxRec only listed the title fight as the only fight of the night, which, if is accurate, it's an interesting situation in itself about a week out from the event. And there will no doubt be some who will suggest that this late cancelling may have ended up being a blessing in disguise for the event promoters, if the event was struggling in any way. Hard to say on that front. But now Oquendo, he'll have to wait even longer for his title shot, which the WBA was ordered to provide him by a court after the 45-year-old won a court case, and this was years ago now. This guy, he hasn't been in the ring since 2014. And the way things are going, Oquendo, he's looking at 2019 for his title shot now. And whether it's against Charr, well, that's a whole nother story. But, just say Charr is exonerated. They're going to have to stand up the event again. They'll have to do it all over again. And given the fact it took so long to lock this in now cancelled fight, I don't hold out much hope that it would happen quickly. It'll be sometime in 2019. And I'd note also, even if Charr is exonerated, he's always going to have that stank, that spectre of being a drugs cheat. I've seen it over Twitter and social media today, people calling him, a steroid cheat. He's a drug cheat of some sort. This is what people are saying. B sample is yet to come, so, I'm going to withhold judgment until then. But, these sorts of accusations, they're hard for boxers to shake once they sort of suspicion falls on you. And especially if the circumstances involve alleged steroid use. And you look at Charr, he's well built. Some people will just go, okay, 1 and 1 makes 2. He's a drugs cheat. And that may be a possible outcome depending on the B sample result. But if Charr fails the B sample, he'll get stripped. And this is where it gets interesting for me because, ironically enough, the WBA already has a ready-made third champion, an interim world champion, Trevor Bryan, who could potentially be elevated to the regular champion status should Charr be stripped. And if he is stripped, I could see that happening. And it would also eliminate the stain that is having 3 heavyweight champions under one sanctioning body. That's madness. Whatever the WBA was thinking, time for an uppercut on that one, guys. The interim status, it was ironically only granted for Bryan's fight with BJ Flores over alleged court action in the Charr-Oquendo fight. And that was fictitious court action. There was no court action. It was a bunch of BS. But the interim world title status still stood. So there's a certain irony now with this whole thing that Bryan may end up sort of leapfrogging him and becoming the regular title champion. We'll have to see where that goes. But even if Bryan isn't elevated, he could still land the Oquendo fight. As the WBA, it is obligated to give the 45-year-old a shot. The WBA needs to get rid of this lingering situation. They need to deal to it. So it's fair to say there is a lot of moving parts with all this. But Oquendo, he could end up being Bryan's first title defense, be that as an interim champion or if he's elevated to a regular champion status. And yes, it's another fight no one really wants to see. But the real loser in all this, it could end up being unbeaten American contender Jarrell Miller, who's been trying to beat a path to the weakest recognized belt in heavyweight boxing. He's been going after Manuel Charr. Miller has been very overt in saying that that's the route he wants, and he's been turning down other fights while he waits for a shot at Charr. He's made no secret of that. He's been turning down fights and eliminators left, right and centre, turning down call-outs. He just wants Manuel Charr's belt. And he says part of that is because legacy. He wants the legacy. He wants the negotiating power that that belt brings. That shot may never come now. Or at the very least, it may be delayed significantly while Charr tries to clear his name. And it may not even be Charr that he eventually faces, because they're going to have to work this out, shake it down, and it might end up being Oquendo or Bryan or whoever else. It's the WBA. You never really know what's going to happen. But it begs the question, should Jarrell Miller just change tack given the extreme uncertainty with Charr's situation? If he continues down this path, he may end up waiting the best part of a year to face Charr or whoever else in the WBA. And Miller, as we know, he's been well and truly savaged by fans for taking on Thomas Adamek and trying to sell it to fans as one of the toughest tests of his career. And a fight that, is going to really put him through his paces, and a fight that he says, he will deserve a title shot on the back of. And fans aren't buying that BS from Miller. He can try shove that down our throats all he wants, but it's not the fight that we want to see. And the reality is, if he tries to take another stay busy like that, or another 2, while waiting for a WBA shot, he's going to lose even more credibility. No one wants another fight like that. So if he decides to wait for a shot in the WBA, he can expect more criticism, and he's already been harshly criticized. And the option that fans really want for Jarrell Miller is a high-level contender fight, so we can actually see how good he is. He already had the option to face Kubrat Pulev. He's had other options to face other guys. There's been multiple call-outs. So for a guy that said everyone is avoiding him in the heavyweight division, he's doing his best now to go ghost and just not want that work. And that's not going to work for his career long term. So he's got a choice now. What does he do? Does he want to wait the best part of a year potentially for a shot in the WBA? Or is he going to be steered down another path? And if so, what's that path? But it's fair to say, this Charr situation, it's a mess. It's got flow-on effects for the rest of the division. Jarrell Miller, Fraser Kendo, potentially Trevor Bryan, and who knows what else will pop up in the meantime. And some of it's not going to play out for some time depending on the outcome of this B sample. This all-important B sample, which Manuel Charr will be hoping and praying comes out in his favour. But if not, see you later, Charr. You'll be banned, labelled a drugs cheat, never to be seen again. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.